Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelinski said NATO wasn't doing enough. He told the alliance it hasn't given Ukraine enough military hardware, and he appealed for military aid without restriction.
The Ukrainian army has been resisting for a month in unequal conditions, and I have been repeating the same thing for a month now. To save people in our cities, Ukraine needs military assistance, without restrictions. As without restrictions, Russia is using its entire arsenal against us. Destroys all living things. Any objects, from houses to churches, from food warehouses to universities, from bridges to hospitals. Ukraine turned to you for planes, so that we do not lose so many people. And you have thousands of fighter jets, but we haven't been given one yet. You have at least 20,000 tanks. Ukraine asked for 1% of all your tanks. Give to us or sell to us. But we do not have a clear answer yet. The worst thing during the war is not having clear answers to requests for help.
Це найстрашніше під час війни – не мати ясних відповідей на запити про допомогу.
Well, let's go to the Belgian capital now and join Brussels correspondent Jack Parrock, who's been following today's developments. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. A busy day of diplomacy in Brussels. Briefly, just bring us the live lines and help us understand what NATO has been saying at its meeting today.
Well, what we've seen is the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelinski demanding that no-fly zone over his country, but really we know that he's kind of flogging a dead horse on this issue now. The Western nations simply haven't been able to do that. They fear being brought into a hot war, into direct conflict, because in order to enforce that no-fly zone, they would need to use their planes to essentially, patrol the area, and then could come into direct conflict with Russian aircraft as well. And can you hear me okay, Charles?
And I didn't quite hear what you said very clearly there, Jack, but that's okay. A lot of talk, though, about the energy question. I mean, Europe's sort of pesky reliance on Russian gas coming up quite a bit.
This has been one of the crucial issues, and there is a lot of pressure on European leaders to now start looking into sanctioning the Russian energy sector, and that's because really that's the way that they can force the hand of the Kremlin. That's where the money lies, essentially. But the issue there is that the Europeans were somewhere in the region of 40 to 45% reliant on Russian gas. Interestingly, what we've seen, the Financial Times has been reporting during this summit that the United States is preparing to be able to send 15 billion cubic meters of natural gas across the Atlantic to try and fill in the shortfalls that could happen. The EU already outlined a plan to try and reduce its reliance on Russian gas by 2/3 by the end of the year. But this is a huge issue, especially for countries like Germany, who are heavily reliant on it, and also countries like Bulgaria, which are almost exclusively reliant on Russian gas. And remember, citizens in the European Union, as all over the world, are seeing their energy prices to heat their homes go up dramatically. And so this is a hot issue, both in the fact of trying to force the Kremlin to change its ways, but also on the harm it could do to the EU and to the citizens in the European Union.
And Jack, we've seen images of the US flag side by side with the EU flag fluttering above a red carpet. President Biden, the first US president to join an EU leaders summit in Brussels. So all eyes on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing a real shift, aren't we? This is a very different sense of a presidency. Joe Biden actually has come here and tried to sort of put pressure on the Europeans to do more, to be more aggressive with their sanctions. But the question is, this is a very different issue to perhaps some of the issues that his predecessor Donald Trump had, where the amount of harm that, as we were talking about, for instance, with the issue with the gas, that the Europeans would do to themselves by imposing these sanctions is much less than the sanctions that the Americans are putting on. We have seen a lot of friendly sort of exchanges between the leaders with the US president. I think there's a very different shift in the way that he's been received here to the way Donald Trump was when he had attended the NATO summit a few years ago.
And for NATO particularly, Jack, I mean, has this conflict to some extent breathed fresh life into the alliance and made it more relevant again on the world stage? Because, I mean, we've got President Biden, as you mentioned, in Brussels there. I wonder if in that sense NATO has been reinvigorated by this crisis in Ukraine.
I think a lot of people would say that that's absolutely the case, to be honest, Charles. We've seen today an additional 40,000 troops are going to be sent into 4 battle groups into Bulgaria, Slovakia, Romania and Hungary. These countries on NATO's eastern flank are consistently and continually saying that they need to have bolstered defences in order to try and assuage the fears of their populations that if Russia continues to march through Ukraine, that they could also, that the Kremlin could also start eyeing up other Eastern European countries as well. And I think that's something that we've seen now, that these countries, that NATO certainly, as you say, might have had some new life breathed into it. I mean, a lot of people would say that ostensibly, really, this military alliance is there to focus directly on the threat from Russia, and now that threat is far more realistic after this invasion of Ukraine.
Jack, thank you very much indeed. Jack Parrock was talking to me there from the Belgian capital, and he is the Brussels correspondent.